Hey, good morning, Tim.
Good
Welcome.
morning. Good
Yeah.
morning and welcome to you. How are you?
Hey, doing good. Back in office, you can see the places here. I can show you people working out there in the cabin.
Hi, people. Good day. Good day. Oh,
Yeah,
that's wonderful. I bet that makes you feel a lot more confident.
yeah. Things are just getting back on track. I feel, especially when the vaccine is doing its rounds. Lot many companies are pretty positive. I think the UK already started from today. Distribution of the COVID vaccine, which seems very positive sign. There are a few companies in India as well, which is in talk. I feel not later than January first week, things will be available to us as well. But that's just a speculation at the moment. I haven't had any confirmation from the government side. But yeah, hopefully things will come on track. Oh, by the way, when US is gonna experience the vaccine, what updates you have? Do you on the
Oh, I
COVID?
have lots of updates. I have one sad update and two very happy updates.
Uh-huh.
Number
Let's
one,
start. Yeah.
Number one, the sad update. We're talking here in New Mexico about running our hospitals like a battlefield now. It's serious because of the holidays that we've experienced, and because people have not been as attentive to social distancing and masking and that kind of thing. We're blown out, and the news is saying, and a lot of nurses and healthcare leaders are saying, we are now at the point where we need to actually start looking at, okay, who do we need to treat first? They used to say, let's
Mhm.
treat everyone. Now they're saying, okay, guys, if you're really not sick, if you can do anything, you have to stay at home. So we're right at the breaking point with our healthcare, and it's not necessarily the buildings. We just opened up that new building downtown for second level support for COVID after you've recovered, and you can actually go back in. They have a whole building for that. It's just we don't have we don't have nurses and doctors because they're all over the map, and
Mhm.
we're covering down south, we're covering up north, and we can't staff this. So that's a sad thing. Now,
Mhm. Yeah.
two happy things. Um, New Mexico here and parts of the United States are getting the vaccine, but we're going to give it to the first responders.
Right.
And we're going to get the vaccine that you have to keep refrigerated. And that's one of the reasons why we're getting it earlier than many other states, because we have facilities here in New Mexico where we can store very, very vaccines that have to be kept at very, very low temperatures. So in a way, we're lucky. And we're going to be able to start doing that very soon. It's days, not weeks. So at least our frontline staff will be protected.
Yeah. Also, I think the current weather situation or the condition is also very favorable for the vaccine. What temperature are you living in now at the moment?
Um, right now I'm at 30 degrees Fahrenheit, which is just under freezing, and we have 15 to 35-mile-an-hour winds. The snow is just a little bit here and there, like on my yard. There's two or three patches of snow, but we're going to have snow again tomorrow. But yeah, the cold is here, which means number one, some people are going to be isolated. Number two, other people are going to gather inside. So we don't know what the numbers are going to look like.
Right. Right. Okay. What's the second good news that you want?
So, um, I don't know if you've heard me talk about the national labs here. Have I actually given you a little background on New Mexico and the national labs?
Yes, I remember one of the last call that we had. You did mention about it,
Yeah,
the
and
good
and
facility that you have.
to update people on the call here, um, we right after World War II, the federal government said, where are we going to put research into nuclear energy? Where can we put these people where they can be isolated and they can basically grow and develop? And they chose New Mexico because it was it's absolutely nothing here. So we have Albuquerque, which is some of the densest population of PhDs in the nation. And we actually have a lot of the planning in the organization, the project management of experiments in new and emerging technologies for the federal government. We work, and the Department of Energy manages this. Now, the Department of Energy also manages Los Alamos National Labs. Those are the guys who are the real smart ones. They're the ones who are the scary, smart brain trust. And they have just created a data model where they can actually look anywhere in the country and they can say, based on what we've known and we've captured in this county, right? We're talking about a small, very small subsection of the state. In this county, you should close your restaurants for a week. You need to close your bars for a week and a half. You can open your schools for half days. They can do that level of discrete analysis now. So we're going to be able to have a chance to, number one, help improve the capabilities of local communities in getting back on their feet quickly based on control of the interaction of humans. And number two, learn even more about the spread of the virus as well as keep up to date on how we're doing. But the numbers are atrocious. That there's, again, we're hitting numbers that we never thought we'd ever hit. We can't even wrap our heads around what's going on here. Many people like me are like, let's do some triage after this big wave is over, and the wave's going to be over in the spring.
Yeah, hopefully things will get better, as I said in the beginning. It's getting better. It's getting better. And also with the facility that you have in New Mexico, things will be more in control manner. It is good to hear about the facility that you have. I mean, many of us doesn't have that kind of, leverage.
And I must admit, I'm not politically motivated. Okay, I am totally politics is something for somebody down the street. Okay, I don't care about politics. It's a fact of life, like the sun coming up, the clouds being in the sky, and it's going to rain. We're going to have politics, right? But the transition of the political structure that we're going through, it is a very positive structure. Already people are starting to calm down and relax, and it looks like there's some good organization going on. And at the national level, the communication is very strong again, which we've been looking for. And whenever you have a leader who's strong and focused, it's always healthy for the group. So yeah, things are getting better.
All right, good luck on that part, Tim.
I'll keep you posted.
to your side of the people and to my side of the people as well.
Yeah.
All right, coming back to our discussion topic. Today, I thought of picking up a topic which is more close to your heart, project management. You yourself is a project management expert, and I think nobody could give more elaborative picture than yourself. So let's discuss on the project management stuff. Last few days, you and I had been discussing on the challenges that I personally keep facing when we do project management for our clients. Similarly, I believe there are many other businesses which come across the similar challenges, primarily the risk, the quality, the resources, and other things. So let's take one-on-one and help us understand, Tim, from your lenses, how you see it, and what possible solutions you would like to recommend.
Okay. So let's talk about the problem. The problem with small businesses is we run in crisis management. We're basically reactive, you know. We deal with things as they come up. An issue is a thing that comes up. An issue is something that gets in the way of moving forward. And so we deal and we hop from issue to issue to issue. But the problem is that's all we see. We never get ahead of the game. And
Right.
so what we want to look at is how can we put things in place that keep us ahead of the game and allow us to plan and organize and be more proactive. And that's what project management intends to do. But the problem is sometimes we put too much project management in place and it gets in the way of the work getting done. And the big question with companies like yours, Kumar, is how much is too much project management? By the way, this is a real big topic with 8-figure leaders too. You know, how much is too much? What's optimal? And so we've discussed this over the last 2 decades inside of business, and we look at some way of determining how do I bring in process in such a way that it improves things, but it doesn't get in the way of work. And in the project management space, we call this project management maturity. Maturity does not mean you're old or you've been around for so long. Maturity means that you're ready. You're ready to bring in processes. You know, I can afford to give my people 5 to 15 minutes in the morning and the afternoon to sit on their spreadsheets and see what they need to get done today. I can afford a 20-minute discussion with my team in order to think about what might happen. And when we start thinking about might happen, we're all of a sudden starting to talk about risk. Now, risk is very interesting. Risk is something that might happen, and if it does happen, it will have an impact. And we can actually build risk into our schedule, into our days, into our work. And we actually build risk into our budgets too. You may carry insurance. That's actually building in a reserve for your risk, okay? So you do that from a business standpoint. What we're talking about is, can we bring risk capabilities in to make
Right.
work easier? There's a bunch of ways to do this. The simplest way is to make a list of your risks and prioritize. It takes a little bit of time. You have to figure out what categories you want to capture. And then what you do is you organize it, you prioritize it and say, okay, what's my highest risk? Now, your risk might happen. You don't know if it will happen. Some risks, they have a window of opportunity, right? And they're going to go away. So you're going to have to capture when that risk could possibly occur. And so you're going to be looking at this risk register on a regular basis and putting some risks to bed because they never occurred, and making sure that some risks don't blow up on you. And that's the kicker. Once you start this, you really can't stop analyzing risks. It's going to have to be a normal part of your process, because a small impact risk might get really big, and a risk with really low probability all of a sudden in 15 minutes may become a high probability risk. And it's not just for you to assess. You're going to have to actually think about, you know, how do I organize risk? How do I communicate risk? And all of your team and you are going to have to assess the risk in the same way, so that you can actually make sense of what your team is saying. And let me give you an example. Low risk, moderate risk, and high risk. What does that mean? When I was working with small projects, like I'd go into a company for 2 to 6 weeks, it doesn't make sense to bring in whole risk infrastructure, right? So what I did was I said, look, guys, you're really good at estimating probability, right? You know what a coin flip is. It's a 50-50. You know what 25% is. It's 1 out of 4 pieces. And we can talk about a 10-sided dice. We can talk about 20-sided dice. So you're really good at understanding and comprehending probability, but let's make sure we can do the same side with impact. And I said, we're only going to talk about impact at 3 different levels. And whenever we talk about impact, we're going to have low, moderate, high. Low means if I wasn't looking for it, I wouldn't notice it occurring. Now, we want to watch for those low risks because they could become very, very probable, and they could become very, very high. So we still want to track them. Now, moderate means that we have to slow down if it happens. It's something that gets in the way of our work, and we're going to have to attend to them. And then let's call all of our red risks work stoppage. Okay, that's the impact. That's all we have. We have stuff we have to track, but it probably won't do anything to us. Items that are going to slow us down and items that are going to stop us in our tracks. And if we communicate that, that's enough for us right now. And then all of a sudden, your team and you, and potentially, eventually, even your client are going to be able to talk about low, moderate, and high risks. And in fact, this is where things get interesting. Once you have stability within your group, you can actually start communicating outside, and you don't just have a risk register. You have a risk register with highest priority, highest probability, and it goes all the way down. And then you take the top 5 risks, put them in a Word document, and then do a summary of general project risk. There's a bunch of different ways to do that, but you basically, once you know those 5 highest probability risks, you know what your general risk is for the project. And we can, and that all of a sudden becomes communication. And so you're working centrally from project to the team, and then you're engaging the client and you're growing out your risk capability. This is basically the way you want to do it. You want to do it again. I talk about this all the time. Let's crawl first, and then we'll walk, and then we'll run. And then all of a sudden you have your risk going. You have to step in as a leader and make sure that it's spinning and keep it spinning. But at the same time, it's actually moving on its own too, with the support of the team, your team leads.
Right. Any risk that you mentioned about the low, the moderate, and the high risk? I mean, any sort of risk, I believe, it directly impacts your budget and timelines. Now, out of your experience, um, could you like to highlight some of the low, the moderate, and the high kind of risk a project or a business can get into?
Okay, so I'm not going to prioritize this, but common sources of risk, raw materials. Okay, if you have a bill of materials and it's shipping from one or more sites coming into your work site, that's going to be a focus of risk. Okay, resources, availability of people, but it's not just availability of people with the right skills. And so you're going to invest, and this is something you build in. You build in time for training. It's not just skills like technology, like coding and that kind of thing. It's working with people, it's decision making, and it's management of business topics like risk and other topics that we'll talk about here in a few minutes. And it's not just for making sure the individuals work well. It's training people in a standard way of doing things. Your best friend is centralization and standardization. You have a central place where all information comes, and standardization means that everybody does it the same way. Because if you standardize, you can actually collect more and more data and information and have it more cohesive. And that's your goal right now. You don't just want to see what's happening on one project. You want to be able to compare the data across multiple projects. Yeah, money. Seeing money go away while time does not is scary. You're spending money without getting anything done. There's a set of analysis tools called earned value management that allow you to look at the work getting done, work
Right.
getting done over here, and the money being spent over here. And it's looking at kilometers per liter. And you don't want to see, am I spending money at the right time? What you want to be looking at is, am I getting the work out of the money I'm spending? And those are metrics that once you start collecting your budget over time and your work over time, you can start looking at that.
I mean, there are various tools which can actually give you this capability, right? A dashboard,
Right.
a
And
concrete dashboard.
what's
Yeah.
beautiful is all these tools run under the same 12 formulas, and you can use these tools, Microsoft Project, Primavera, Sciforma. They do great reporting, but you can do the same thing in Excel. It's very
Mhm.
easy. And you can do back of the napkin, and that will give small businesses the ability where they don't have to even invest $700 in software. They can just do this with a little bit of analysis. It's not that difficult. In fact, all of my project management classes, I set up a dashboard and I use just these same tools to actually track our progress. Are we getting through the material in the right amount of speed? It's not that difficult, but it does take a little bit of organization up front.
Right.
Yeah.
What
So,
about the other angle of it? The quality part. I mean, that's equally important. But how do you see that?
so understand it actually goes hand in hand with risk. I look at quality and risk in the same manner. Those are the two areas that we don't take advantage of in small businesses. Quality actually says, am I doing work correctly? And if you invest a little bit in quality, all of a sudden you're dropping your waste. And I'm not just talking about wasting raw materials, I'm talking about wasting time. And you're also dropping, um, um, just a second here, I skipped a groove. You're also looking at rework. Now, with a software organization, such as you, rework is your enemy. How do I get people to actually go in and be able to do it right the first time? But the problem is, human behavior says we're going to make mistakes. And so we have to have inspection and testing, but we can't have too much inspection and testing. It's like risk, because if quality becomes more important than getting the work out the door, you're never going to get the work out the door. So there's a balance there, and it's called cost of quality. And there are ways to actually look and say, okay, what is quality? How do I add quality? Well, I give my people time to do the work. I give them adequate training. I give them checklists. I make sure they know how to use the checklists. And I ensure they follow the checklists. And that's the key thing. When we talk about quality, we talk about two things. We talk about accuracy, and that's your test and inspection, right? Did I hit the mark? did I get close to the center of the target? And this can be, did I go finish this piece of work with under 3 mistakes, right? That's my target. Now, we have another side of quality called precision. You have quality control that looks at the accuracy. You have quality assurance that looks at precision. And precision says, did I do it the same way I did it before? Can I repeat success? And if you can do things successfully, and if you can repeat it, then you have a business, right? You can actually go from client to client to client, from project to project, and you can predict a relatively high probability of success. This is the beauty of quality, because it's not just within one set of work. You can actually create a quality operation too. So quality has two things. It has the ability to repeat success, and it also has the ability to increase accuracy. Now, in increasing accuracy, we have continuous improvement. So the 3 things that you want to look at if you want to introduce quality into an operation, and this is any business, it could be any group of people, in fact. Number 1, you want to have your tests and inspection. Number 2, you want to have your process control. And number 3, you want to have continuous improvement. And it doesn't have to be heavy lifting. What it has to be is consistent, repeatable, and everybody does it the same way.
Can risk impact your quality?
Yes, yes. In fact, this is the interesting thing. And the metrics you collect in quality cannot just be on the products you're putting out the door. Actually, you should be having a quality umbrella over not just your product development, but your operations. Like, how am I doing? Is my organization healthy? Is the way we're doing the work, is the way I'm managing my group of people, is that working well? How many mistakes is that operation occurring under? So quality, once you get it inside the operations, you can actually apply it in all sorts of areas. And that's the strength of it. And that's one of the reasons why I suggest to companies to introduce quality and risk together. Because number 1, you're getting to be a little more proactive. And number 2, you're introducing tools for your entire organization to stabilize and continue to grow and continue to get better.
Mm-hmm.
This is the beautiful thing. Once you
And
get
then,
go ahead.
yeah, no. So once the risk impacts your quality, definitely, then it also impacts your timeline, isn't it? Because those risks, I mean, these all 3 things are interrelated, isn't it? One gets hit, the other gets affected.
Right. And you have to plan quality in. You can't just, staple you can't just staple inspections on the outside of your work and say this is quality. It has to be built into the plan. There's activities that you're doing, and like I said, it's not just taking 10% of your schedule and putting it at the end of the project for buffer. If that's all you're doing, great, that's going to help you. But there are better, more accurate ways to forecast and estimate and manage both time and budget that actually are more effective. But just getting a toehold on quality and risk actually can help. And those tools, number 1, get you ahead and give you a little breathing room. And number 2, allow you to actually distribute this control, not just in the work you're doing for your clients, but in your operations themselves.
All right. I mean, let's talk a bit on the remedies, Tim. If you can put some light on how to overcome. So, say for example, I run a project, right, and there is a risk which occurred, right. Now it's impacting my quality and timeline. Just we discussed, like, right. How we can still keep the controls in our hand? Do you have some magic stick which can do this?
Yeah. It's called crisis management. Okay, so let's differentiate between a risk and an issue. Okay, a risk might happen, an
Mhm.
issue is already here. So if a risk has already occurred, it's no longer a risk, it's now an issue. And you have to turn on your issue management. Now, if it's an unplanned or an unpredicted risk, we have something called a workaround. Okay?
Mhm.
A workaround means that I go in and I put a band aid on it, and then I figure out what I'm going to do next. And you should have planned band aids. Basically, say, here's what we're going to do, right? And that's what risk planning is. It's actually planning responses. If this risk occurs, this is what we're going to do. Now, the time that you add to your schedule and the money you add to your budget when you're planning for risk is going to go into something called a reserve. And it's both that risk occurring and its impact and the time and money it takes to respond to that risk. So you almost have to plan for extra activities and add that to your schedule and your budget when you're planning. Now, when a risk occurs that you did not plan, that's where you have to do your workaround. Okay, your work is in an unplanned state. You don't know what's going to happen. You have to sit down and say, okay, let's stabilize this. Now, what can we do? And that's basically a plan A and plan B. Okay, this is looking at contingencies. And this is where we actually can add a little bit of opportunity for not just right sizing, but doing the work better. You have to do this now. As a business owner, I've observed you and I talked to you. You already do workarounds. It's part of crisis management. What you want to do is start moving more of that crisis management to risk management. What might happen, thinking 1 week ahead, thinking 2 weeks ahead, and when you're planning and proposing work for clients, or whether you're deciding whether to do a major initiative inside your company, you're actually building in what might happen. And there's two things you want to look for. You don't just have risks, you want to look for triggers to risk too, risk triggers. And this is where your contingency planning comes in, your plan A and plan B. For instance, in a manufacturing company, right? Let's say you have a tool, and if it overheats, the tool's going to lock down for 2 hours, and you can't have the assembly line stopping for 2 hours. So what do? You create a trigger that watches the thermostat on the tool. And before that thermostat gets high enough for that machine to lock down, you say, okay, when it reaches that temperature, I'm going to shut the machine down and let it cool down for 15 minutes. So all of a sudden, you're not just looking for risks occurring, you're looking for triggers to occur too. So you're going to have a risk register that actually has responses to triggers. And that's where your plan A, plan B can happen in a proactive manner. Okay. And that's where you really want to do your contingency planning. So you have risks and triggers that you're monitoring, and you're keeping an eye on that. And it's not just you monitoring, it's your little fingers that are capturing the data through all your workers and the work itself that are telling you we have a potential problem coming up.
Right. I'll ask you one real life question then. Say a risk has occurred and now we are working on the workarounds, right? Just you mentioned it. Uh, what are the points that we need to take care when we submitting and work around to a client? you gave an example of a manufacturing unit, but can you correlate it with the software industry?
Services, yes. So when we're talking about workarounds with this, um, you're working with client satisfaction. So you're going to have one opportunity for a workaround. You're going to have one opportunity to actually get this right. So you want to actually establish the appropriate amount of time to be able to plan the right workaround, as well as, make sure that the emotional and the um, business impact don't get in the way of the success of the project. So your job is to be part of the client engagement while your workers are doing the actual work and the workaround piece. And the more that you can work as a team instead of that, you're going to be more successful, because you can focus successfully with the relationship as they're focusing successfully with the work. Um, it's and clarity and roles and responsibilities helps. And when I was talking earlier with training, with if you can predict exactly how your team is going through the processing of the workaround, you probably do this already. You know how your team works with an issue that's popped up. You know how they analyze things. You know how they approach the problems, and you can give a semi-accurate analysis with the client with just about half a minute of speaking with the team lead. You're already doing it. What we're talking about is formalizing it and giving yourself a little bit more time for, a little more thoughtful analysis with the client in mind, while the team is focused in their thoughtful analysis with the work in mind. That seems to be the best when everybody works with the specific areas. Yeah, it's tricky working in the services industry, because you have a relationship that you're trying to protect, as well as you're trying to get good work done, and you want to do it once, right? Rework is dangerous, because number one, you did it wrong the first time, and it may not be your fault. Okay. And let's make sure that we're talking about rework as rework. Okay. Number two, you're going to have to undo it, right? And then you're going to have to do it again. So you're in effect basically applying 3 times the amount of effort to apply that rework. Your client's waiting, you're waiting, your team is very heightened. They're scared and they're angry with themselves, and so it's a job and a half for you to create that bubble of protection for your team while you're working with that client, and it has to be that way. And again, doing this in a very predictable, repeatable manner will actually give that team the confidence that they can actually do that. And when they see themselves going into this problem solving over and over again with your support, with your protection as an umbrella, they'll be able to pull through. This is the way humans work. You hire smart people, you hire people who are innovative, and you protect them, and you give them an opportunity to do great work, and they'll take off. As long as it fulfills them. This
Yeah.
is the way it works.
See, I all right. Risk should happen, right? It will happen sometime. The problem is not that. The problem comes in reorganizing yourself, reorganizing, or creating a workaround. I mean, that should not go wrong, because, as you mentioned, right, you have gone wrong the first time, right? You should not repeat the same thing. Now,
Right.
yeah. So those are the area that you mentioned. And also, Tim, would you like to highlight some of the project management styles that you have come across so far?
Yes. Let's go through this real quickly. There are some standard uh, leadership styles that we call project management styles as well. Laissez-faire never works. There used to be a style. It's basically non-management. And this is a risk of agile shops. Everybody says agile is where the team takes accountability for the work, right? And they take on the focus of the leadership of the work. That's not so. Um, People are hardwired to either be leaders. Well, not hardwired, but leadership has to be a component when you have a group of people. And if you are the designated leader and you just say, guys, get your work done, you're
Mhm.
going to be in trouble. There has to be some formal delegation. If you don't formally delegate, then you're going to have a small set of people who are going to want to be leaders, and you're going to have a great big bunch of people who are going to be looking for a leader, and it's going to cause churn inside the group. So when we say laissez-faire, or let it be for French, um, you you have to, especially in agile projects, have clarity and roles and responsibilities. When I'm not here, these decisions are held by that person. These decisions are held by that person. These decisions are held by that person. And that's delegation. There's another style which calls servant leadership. Now,
Mhm.
again, clarity in roles and responsibilities. You don't have to be an expert. What you have to be is emotionally intelligent. You have to be able to understand your emotions and be able to control them. And you have to understand people's emotions, because you're no longer, as a servant leader, working with the work. You're working with the people who are doing the work. And this is where I talked about creating that umbrella of safety for your team. This is like a farmer, right, who clears the field out of rocks and weeds. This is basically the model that's preferred right now, and it's the one that's being talked about in leadership classes all over, and it's being promoted as the leadership style. Well, that's one. That's one. You have transactional, basically, which says, if you guys get this done, I'll buy you a couple pizzas. That's effective. That actually
Right.
is motivational. And then you have charismatic, and
Mhm.
charismatic says, it's through my character and my understanding of emotions. It's my emotional intelligence, being able to stand up, and people recognize by the way I carry myself. This is another style, and we're getting away from the technical areas, aren't we? This is what's strange.
Right.
We're getting more into understanding people instead of understanding how work gets done, and this is what we forget. The One of the things is we're looking at. I gave you the spectrum, right? Non-management, healthy management. There's transactions. There's charisma. There's other thing. There's something called transformational leadership too, which is where you go in and you don't say, you demonstrate, right? And people observe by the way you do things what the proper way of doing things are: treating people respectfully, getting my work done, keeping an organized desk, having everything on time. Okay. And these things, transformational and transactional, charismatic, often go hand in hand. So when you talk about styles of management, we're talking about styles of leadership. That's the key phrase here. Now, getting back to the technical part, um, it's it's basically mechanics. It's a predictable way of going in and understanding, here's how the work gets approved, Here's how the work gets planned. Here's how the work gets led and directed and managed. Here's how we do our controls, right? Our inspections and change management. And we should actually spend a little bit more time. I don't know if we have time to talk about this, but maybe change management and configuration management. I haven't asked you this, but do you have some formal activities that you call configuration management?
Yeah, we do configuration management here, Tim.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, you generally have a tool for your configuration management, right?
right, right,
Okay, yeah, and again, we don't have to have tools for this. We can actually talk to businesses, and we can help businesses that don't invest in major tools to actually build a configuration management system just from the way they manage their documents.
right, right.
Yeah, yeah, and for everybody out there, if configuration management is an alien term, just replace it with test and inspection and version control. Okay, and in software, we live and die by configuration management. It's how we control the versioning of our code, and it's how we control um, how we control the way we test and inspect, both for quality and for completeness or scope. So yeah, and those two are the next two things. If I was to help a company grow its capability, I would help them formalize risk and quality management to become proactive, and then formalize change and configuration management. And again, because you are strictly a software company, configuration management is front and center in your minds anyway. So you're strong in that probably right now.
All right. I mean, this could be also correlated with the workarounds that is done on the projects.
Yeah. So there's 10 areas and 10 skills that a project manager has to be aware of. It's scope, schedule, and cost. Okay. Scope is my how and my what. What are we going to have at the end of the work, and how are we going to get there? Right. Schedule is when things are going to happen. Cost is how much we have to spend. And then you have your resources, your human and physical resources. You have your stakeholders, right? Those are the people who are the non-team impactors to your project. And then you have communications, which integrates the human components with the work, right? And then you have quality, risk, and outsourcing or purchasing. And then you have 1/10, which is called integration management, which ties all of these things together. And so what we've talked today about is quality and risk management, which is just two of these areas. And then actually change management, configuration management are part of that tying things together management, which we call integration. Yeah, and again, if you want to, we can actually explore change. The more formal you are in managing change, the more you have control of the end state of the deliverable. Now, change management does not go away when you get into Agile. Agile, everybody thinks that Agile is great because it says we can change stuff through the entire life of the project. Well, yes, sort of, but change doesn't go away. If you have uncontrolled change, you can't predict your schedule, you can't predict your budget, you can't predict anything. And so it's a double-edged sword that you have to manage. And it's using that communication to set expectations with your stakeholders, to establish, a proper analysis and a comprehensive understanding between yourself and your teams. And this is the only way you're going to be able to get a hold of, yes, we didn't know as much as we did yesterday. Now we know more. And all of a sudden you're starting to say, oh, wow, risk is part of change management. And yes, it is. And change management supports risk, and change management supports quality. And quality actually says, if I do this and I continuously improve and I can use my change management to do this, it works in a much more healthy manner. And if I have that plugged into my formal communication infrastructure, we're good to go. Now, all of a sudden, I'm not talking about project management, am I? I'm talking about business management. It's no different. Uh, Running a project is no different from running a business. The only thing is, a business is a combination of projects and operations. A project is nothing more than doing business in an unknown area. You've never done this before, in a certain way, in order to try to predict a higher level of success. That's the key. It's just running good business. Now I'm lucky. A lot of the students who go through my classes have only seen their organization and how their organization manage projects, and I've seen across all industries, multiple sectors,
Right.
education, government, pharma, healthcare, finance, all these things, right? And I've seen how the 100-year-old companies have done it, and I've seen how the new companies have done it, and that actually opened my eyes. The smart companies, the companies that have been around forever, actually, number one, formalize real quickly, and number two, they find out that sweet spot, which is the optimal amount. And I want to get back to that. There's always an optimal amount of effort. You can do too much quality, you can do too much risk, you can do too much communications. And finding that sweet spot just takes time. It's easy with the technical pieces, because you can see, oh, where all this quality activity is impacting our schedule, right? You can look at the numbers, but when you get to working with people, sometimes you're investing too much in your stakeholders and not enough in your team. And we often don't have metrics to tell us this. And this
Right.
is where the real smart old corporations have the wisdom that these new corporations can learn from.
Right. One part of the risk I wanted to quickly touch upon. We are left with another 10 minutes. Uh, Team conflicts handling, right? I mean, it's one of the very common thing that we come across, wherein everything is fine, but the team that we are working with, they have a conflict in between. I mean, this common issues that I keep hearing from my project managers. How do you like to explain this situation?
Welcome to humanity. Here's the problem. Conflict, okay, we talked about issues, right? Conflict is really interesting. It's a human response to issues. It's a human response to differences. Conflict says I'm emotionally attached to one side of an argument or an issue or even perception. And
Hmm.
the way people are wired can actually create more conflict or less. Many people need to win and need to be right. And it's the job of a leader to say, okay, wrong or right, let's get to the best. Let's not think about what's wrong or right. Let's think about what's best. I'll let you win all day long as it's the best. And it's rewiring that conversation. It's not rewiring the heads of people. It's actually you guiding the discussion to a point that says, we have a lot of emotional energy here. Let's focus it in the area of problem solving instead of trying to discuss, what who's more right and who's more wrong. So when you have conflict, it's good. Conflict is not bad. Unmanaged conflict is where you get in trouble. But conflict is nothing more than that emotional attachment, but it's two ideas. And whenever you have two ideas, you're going to have one that's better. And this is what you want, because this is where innovation comes from. And if you can help rewire that conversation, this is what's beautiful. You can actually increase your innovation. And if you can teach your team conflict management, this is where we go really strong. There's something called Tuckman's ladder. Dr. Bruce Tuckman, right? He looked at how people naturally get into groups and organize at groups. And he said there was 5 steps, right? You form, you storm, you norm, you perform, and you adjourn. Storming is interesting. When you've been around each other for about 6 to 7 weeks, you get on each other's nerves. You do. I put my coffee cup too close to your papers and it makes you feel anxious. Or I spread my papers out on my desk and you like organized styles. If you're a leader in this early part of the work, when they're just learning how to be together, you can actually get in and help facilitate this conflict and say, okay, guys, let's work this out and let's figure out a way to argue in such a way that it doesn't impact the work. Okay. The earlier you can have these conversations, the better you are, but it's never too late. Okay. Now, later on, when they have conflict over the work itself, that's when they can actually engage and start using the tools that you're working with them with, right? And and again, this is a topic for another time. I don't want to spend 20 minutes on this next one, but there are definite ways to manage conflict, and you can lay them out and say, okay, here's how we're going to manage conflict. Number 1, we're going to get everybody to think in the same way. Let's find one topic we can all agree on. And if it's only vanilla ice cream, great. If everybody agrees that everybody likes vanilla ice cream, we're now a group. Good. If we're a group, we can work as a group, we can solve problems. And then there's pushing off the conflict until later. That creates a risk though, because you have to have trust. Then there are other strategies we can talk about, but there are known ways that are effective, and each conflict will require its own response. The best way to manage conflict is to actually agree that there's no winners or losers. We get together, we share all the ideas out on the table, and together objectively, we measure and we say, this is the best idea. It's not my idea, it's the best idea. And constantly refocusing on that concept is where you start getting pride in the team. And that's the last thing I'll leave us with. There's a point when we played football, and there was a point where the coach said, okay, we're done with our drills. Now we're going to play positions, right? This is actually what we call norming and performing in our work. Playing positions means that I get my data and I get my report and I don't have to remind people. And we'll spend time in future talks about this. It's being able to work within our primary skill set where we're most confident. And if everybody does this, it works as a carefully orchestrated, development, and we don't have so much conflict. Clarity of roles, clarity of communication, right? But that means that the leader's going to have to take a different approach. The leader's going to be working more with people than with the work itself. And as we go in project management, just like we go in business, we get further and further away from the actual operations, and we start working with managing through relationships and not so much with the work.
Right. No, these are Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, these are a quite extensive topic. I just spoke about the conflict management. Wow. I mean, we can spend entire day talking about, and it will not be finished.
Well,
Right.
and the beautiful thing is, we can talk about it, but to experience conflict management um, actually communicates the knowledge a lot quicker. And doing it around people and in people and finding those teachable moments in the middle of work actually is more effective than setting aside time for class and discussion. This is where we can really be impactful, is actually doing the teaching as the people get their work
Right. Let's continue our discussion, Tim, next week as well on the same topic. And I would ask people to send in their queries, their questions to the group, and would like to discuss those questions as well in our show on the next Tuesday, same time.
that would
Uh,
be.
Yep. Till then, thank you so much, Tim, for joining in. And all people out there, stay safe. Vaccine is on the way, but yeah, hold it tight. It's not yet
But we're
coming
going to
in.
have,
Yeah.
and again, we're going to have a great spring. Stay home, stay healthy and warm, enjoy yourself. Keep on calling in and having fun. This is what's going to pull us through here. And we'll continue our work together.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I like your comment, by the way, Tim. Welcome to humanity when it comes to dealing conflicts. It's
Yes.
nice.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
talk more about this. Thanks again, Kumar. I really appreciate it. And thanks everyone for dialing in again today.
Thank you all. See you next Tuesday. Cheers. Bye bye.